Thank you so much for coming to Vaping and Mental Health, Exploring the Connection. It is our second community health seminar in Josephine County, so we are really excited to be here. I wanted to introduce our guest panels today. I'll have Kai go first.
Hi, I'm Kai Hall. I'm a mental health therapist for Adapt in Grants Pass.
Hi, I'm Eric Rudolph. I'm a certified recovery mentor and employment specialist with Adapt Integrative Health in Graz Pass.
Hi, I'm Summer Baruki. I'm the Public Relations Specialist for Adapt Integrated Healthcare.
I'm Lisa Fisher. I'm the Tobacco Prevention Outreach Coordinator for Josephine County.
Hello, my name is Sandra Gonzalez. I am a TTS, which is a tobacco cessation treatment specialist, and I work with AllCare Health for Jackson, Josephine, and Curry County.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. How the structure will go today is we'll have our panel talk about different topics within vaping and mental health. And then y'all are welcome to ask Q&As right afterwards. So first off, we will start off with Lisa, who's going to talk about prevention and early intervention for vaping and mental health.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. In my role as a tobacco prevention outreach coordinator, I focus on youth wellness, community engagement, and policy advocacy. Because preventing youth vaping isn't just about stopping the behavior, it's about creating the conditions where healthy choices become the easier default ones. As part of today's broader conversation around youth and mental health, I'd like to share some insights from our tobacco prevention work, particularly where vaping overlaps with emotional well-being and what we've learned from prevention strategies in schools, communities, and families. This work isn't just about reducing harm, it's about building resilience. It's about recognizing that young people don't vape in a vacuum. They vape in environments shaped by stress, access, peer influence, and identity. So our prevention strategies must be as layered, designed to respond not just to the behavior, but to the context surrounding it. In our region, we've implemented alternatives to suspension. So when a student is caught vaping, it's not a closed door. Instead, it becomes a door to support. Our team includes prevention outreach officers who are embedded in the schools, and they're professionals who step in to walk alongside, educate, and listen. Students participate in tailored educational sessions focused not just on the risks of nicotine, but on why they used it in the first place. Anxiety, peer pressure, curiosity, or the need to belong. These interventions treat vaping not as defiance, but as a signal, and they work to meet the need behind the behavior. I also support this work by partnering directly with schools. In middle school health classes, I've provided catch my breath lessons as it's a peer-reviewed, evidence-based curriculum focused on vaping prevention and refusal skills. For students caught vaping, we offer education through the American Lung Association's in-depth program, and that's short for Intervention for Nicotine Dependence, Education, Prevention, Tobacco, and Health. It's a non-punitive alternative to suspension that helps students reflect on their behavior, understand the health risks, and begin to consider change. For students who are further along in use or having caught more than once, we also offer NOT or NOT, and that stands for Not on Tobacco. It's a teen cessation program also developed by the American Lung Association. NOT provides structured support for youth who are ready to quit, and it can also be used as an extended alternative to discipline. Prevention isn't just about stopping risky behaviors, it's about strengthening what protects youth. Protective factors include strong relationships with caring adults, a sense of belonging at school, opportunities to contribute and be recognized, clear expectations and boundaries, and access to coping strategies that support emotional regulation. When we invest in these protective layers, we're not just reducing the chance that youth will start vaping, we're helping them build mental health resilience that lasts a lifetime. We also advocate for policy changes that reduce youth access. This includes zoning restrictions, retail compliance checks, and support for flavor bans, which are particularly effective at reducing youth appeal. Enforcement of minimum legal sales age laws must be paired with prevention messaging and youth engagement, or we risk sending mixed signals. We help families develop skills to start conversations early and often, not just about vaping, but about stress, belonging, and decision-making. When parents stay engaged, even when it's hard, kids are far less likely to turn to substances. I've brought some handouts from SAMHSA's Talk They Hear You campaign. While it's often introduced as a national underage drinking initiative, the campaign actually takes a comprehensive approach, equipping parents to talk early and often about a range of substances, including including alcohol, vaping, marijuana, and opioids. The core message is that these conversations don't have to be formal or forced. Talk They Hear You encourages parents to use everyday moments, like driving to practice, cooking dinner, or watching a show together, as natural opportunities to check in and keep the dialogue going. The resources include helpful guides like talking with your teen about vaping, plus conversation starters designed to build trust and open communication over time. A link and a QR code to access them are in the back by the handouts out in the foyer. I'm grateful to be a part of today's conversation. My hope is that we continue building prevention strategies that are multi-layered, youth-centered, and rooted in connection. We may not be able to control everything youth are exposed to, but we can absolutely shape how they respond and who's beside them when they do. Thank you.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. All right, we have Kai next. He's gonna talk about mental health impacts during vaping use.
Awesome. So nicotine is a stimulant, and it's not really thought of that way for a lot of people because it's not discussed as a stimulant. A lot of people will discuss, people abusing Adderall or other more well-known stimulants, but because it is a stimulant, it has an effect on anxiety, depression, and mood regulation, and people easily can become dependent on a stimulant to feel normal, especially with teenagers where their frontal lobe is not fully developed. It can have a strong impact on their ability to cope and their ability to maintain regulation for their own goods. So vaping is a coping mechanism for a lot of people, not just teens. And sometimes that's part of why teens want to try it. If mom, dad, older sibling, anyone in their family is vaping, they're curious why they do it. They want to understand what the appeal of it is. And so there needs to be some family-based interventions where, it's hard for a teen to want to quit something when mom and dad still do it. And so it's important not to vilify yourself for doing it in a way that makes the teen want to cling on to it more, as it's a taboo or something you're not supposed to do, as teens typically like to do what they're not supposed to do because it's cool. And also, as it is a stimulant, that can really have a strong impact on sleep, their attention, class, academic performance, or even as an adult, it can impact your work, your productivity. You're taking extra breaks to go out in your car and vape. It has a strong impact on every aspect of your life, just as smoking would, but you can kind of hide it a little easier. So people get away with it easier, and you're more likely to hit it more often than you would be to smoke a cigarette. And because of that, nicotine then becomes more addictive and more of a daily use case. So as was mentioned earlier, peer support models and things that have been peer reviewed can be really beneficial in decreasing the frequency and the amount that people use in nicotine, especially in teenagers when, like she said also, the desire to belong can be a huge factor for why someone would return to nicotine. Uh, So I think about like marginalized communities, people that feel left out. They, are at school and they see it's an easy in to make some friends if they can snag a vape from mom or dad or from an older sibling. And so they do it to make a connection, and then before they know it, they're addicted. So finding ways to reduce access is huge, and also discussing social relationships. They don't need to be tied with something like nicotine. For individuals that are vaping, there are lots of supports. Like she mentioned, there's all of the different treatment teams and things available through the schools. And outside of that, lots of counseling agencies provide smoking cessation work and primary health as well. So it impacts your mental health on a level that we don't fully yet understand, because it's hard to research the befores and after when people don't typically want to pick up vaping in a research study. So it's hard to tell exactly what caused what or what came first. But we do know that when vaping or any addiction is involved, it can make mental health much harder. It's easier to lean on the substance than it is to lean on new coping skills when you're already comfortable with one or the other. And because of this, it is so important that there is collaborative work between the individual, their primary care, as well as their mental health. And while that's still a work in progress, that's something we hope to be able to do better. Thanks.
All right, up next, we have Eric, who's gonna be talking about cross-cutting issues.
Yeah, so as a peer support specialist, I'm in a unique position to be able to share my lived experience. Share and reinforce the coping mechanisms, provide hope that there is ways off of nicotine and other addictions. But some of the things I wanted to share today are just some of the things that youth are up against as far as like the vaping industry and how it might differ from what some of us older folks experienced in our youth in terms of like more combustible tobacco forms and more old school things that we were exposed to. So like legal settlements in 1998 and 2009 prohibited tobacco companies from sponsoring music events, sports events, cultural events. E-cigarettes, vape companies are not bound by these same settlements, and it leaves youth vulnerable to these marketing tactics. I know when I was a kid, like, what's my favorite athlete doing? What's my favorite musician doing? Those were the things I discussed with my friend. That was how I fit in. So it's a very these are very susceptible to stuff like that. Those same settlements banned flavored tobacco with the exception of menthol and very specific pipe and cigar products. But I mean, with flavors like gummy bear, cotton candy, glazed donuts, I mean, I'll take a baker's dozen of glazed donuts anytime, even when you think that's, it's not really fair to be dangling those carrots out in front of the youth. And the study showed that 8 out of 10 youth that vape are using these flavors. So it makes it pretty difficult, I would imagine. The vape companies are also utilizing social media by tagging popular celebrities and using promotional techniques like incentivized friend tagging to appeal to youth. And we all know that's where youth are hanging out these days. They're on social media, and they're picking up on all these cues that are being thrown their way. So there's also an emerging thing with health and wellness vapes that aren't even nicotine based. So there's a lot of confusion going on there. These health and wellness vapes are used for delivering vitamins like B12, supplements like caffeine, green tea extract, melatonin, essential oils under the guise of aromatherapy. And they all make unsubstantiated health claims, which can only confuse, a teenager. Like on one hand, nicotine bad. On the other hand, there's these vapes that are supposedly going to be healthy for you. And none of these are regulated for or tested for impurities at all. And even when these vapes do contain compounds that are generally recognized as safe by the FDA, like, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, these things are recognized as safe for topical use or oral consumption, but no one has tested them for being heated or inhaled. When you heat something, it can change the complete like molecular buildup of it, the pathways that it runs through the body in. And they're just generally not really regulated that well. And there's been tests, 30%, 32% of tested vape chews can potentially form toxic ions known as adducts. And this is just like in regular like storage, like sitting at room temperature. Like the individual compounds that are in there have been tested, but they haven't been tested for what they do when they're together, when they're heated together, or even when they're sitting together in regular storage conditions. They can be forming like whole new compounds that aren't even intended or understood or known to be in there. So there's all these different, you have a whole cocktail of compounds that can be doing like, we don't even know what they could be doing just sitting at regular room temperature. So there have been tests done on that. It's pretty interesting. And there's really high amounts of nicotine in the vapes too. There's no limit on how much can be in them in most states in the US. On average, it's double what's allowed in Canada and the European Union. So there's just an onslaught of just new emerging trends. The number of vape products on the market quadrupled from 453 in June of 2021 to over 2,000 in June of 2022. And there's all kinds of legal loopholes and just flat out illegal distribution that makes them really easy for youth to acquire. There's TikTok accounts that promote websites that utilize discrete shipping and techniques that circumvent age restriction laws. And there's just a whole new slew of challenges that youth are up against that we didn't experience as far as combustible tobacco when we were growing up. And it's just I think it's important for us to recognize and be able to navigate that with them, that it's gonna be different for them today than it was for us, and that should be taken into consideration, I think. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. All right. Last, we have Sandra, who's going to be talking about postvention and long-term recovery.
Thank you. Again, my name is Sandra, and thank you so much. As a tobacco treatment specialist with AllCare Health, I currently provide tobacco cessation classes to support individuals in our community who are ready to quit tobacco and take a step toward better health. We often talk about prevention and intervention when it comes to vaping, but today I want to focus on something just as critical: postvention and long-term recovery. Because quitting vaping is not the finish line, it's the beginning of a new journey, one that's often invisible, personal, and full of quiet challenges. We know that for many people, quitting is one of the hardest things they'll ever do. But what happens after they quit? How do we support their mental health, prevent relapses, and build a foundation for long-term wellness? Oh, lost my place there. Long-term wellness. Let's explore those questions together today. Long-term mental health impacts. Nicotine affects the brain's reward system, especially in young users whose brains are still developing. When someone quits vaping, it's not just the cravings they deal with, it's also the anxiety, the mood swings, the irritability, and sometimes even depression. These symptoms can last weeks, sometimes longer, and they don't just go away with willpower. Many people start vaping to manage stress and emotions in the first place. Without nicotine, they may be left without coping tools. That's why long-term mental health support is not optional, it's essential. Relapse is common, and it doesn't mean failure, it means someone needs more support. To prevent relapses, we must help individuals. We want to recognize their triggers, whether it's stress, boredom, or being around friends who still vape. We want to replace the behavior with physical activity, journaling, art, or even just taking a walk. We want to celebrate the progress. Every day without vaping is a victory worth acknowledging. And most importantly, we need to change the narrative. Relapse is not shameful. It is a sign that the person is still trying, and that's worth everything. Quitting vaping creates a gap, one that needs to be filled with healthier ways to cope. We can teach skills like mindfulness and meditation for grounding, physical activity for mood regulation, emotional awareness, helping people name what they feel and know it's okay to feel it. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about learning how to bend without breaking. And those are skills that serve not just recovery, but life. No one should have to go through recovery alone. We need to connect with youth and families with resources. School counselors and social workers, quit lines and mobile apps, support groups, whether in person or virtual, community organizations focused on youth wellness. Parents, teachers, and peers all play a role. Sometimes just a supportive adult can make the difference between giving up and going forward. Even after someone quits, no new challenges can emerge, anxiety, depression, or even new forms of substance use. That's why post-vention means more than checking a box. It means staying engaged, watching warning signs, and creating a culture where asking for help is normal, not a weakness. Let's not forget the power of the message. Public health campaigns should uplift, not shame. They should show real stories, not just statistics. And they should include forward users in the message because their voices are the most powerful. Imagine school posters that say, "You're not alone in this," or videos on social media that share real recovery journeys. These campaigns remind young people that there is life after vaping and it can be better. Quitting vaping is courageous, but staying quit, that's a daily act of strength and deserves our full support. So let's do more than help people quit. Let's help them heal. Let's prioritize the mental wellness. Let's build systems of support. And let's commit as educators, as professionals, as friends, and as a community to walk with people every step of the way. Because recovery is not a moment, it's a movement. Thank you so much, everybody.
Awesome, thank you so much. So now is the fun part. We're gonna open it up to questions and answers for our panelists. If anyone has any questions.
I might have missed it, but Lisa, I know you said that you have a program in the middle school. Is there something in the high school? I might have missed.
So, sorry. So, I do two things in the schools. So one is if we get invited to teach about vaping or any kind of nicotine use, our whole department, it could be alcohol or drugs or anything that if they request it. So, we recently, over this past year, had a health teacher, request that we come in and do a lesson on vaping, so we used Catch My Breath. But, if kids get caught with, nicotine or vapes or, things like that, then people in this, our prevention outreach officers will, mentor them, speak with them, give them lessons, talk with the family and things like that, and be supportive and try to help them quit or, help them, navigate certain things. Also, if they get caught again, so if they get caught the first time, they do get an education in depth. And I will do that as well if they need me to. And then, we do that in middle school and we do that in high school. And, if they get caught again, or even if they just request it, we can, help them through a quitting, curriculum called, not on tobacco.
So were you saying that the only time they're really getting education on vaping is if you guys are asked to come in and do the education? You said it?
Yes, So we can't just make our way in the schools, we can let them know we're available and what we can offer. And they know that the outreach officers are in the schools, and so they might do it more often than I do. I talk to them, but I don't know exactly how often that they're counseling and stuff like that. I do it sometimes, they don't do it quite as often as they do, because I'm not working in the school.
Yeah, 'cause it's a huge problem, so I would assume that they would be doing a lot of educating on it, but.
Yeah, they have some,
Anyways.
yeah, they have some curriculum of their own, but, some, teachers like to supplement with a different curriculum that they, maybe they like something else better, or they just want a different perspective or something like that. You're welcome.
I had a question for our panelists. What are some good coping skills for adults, particularly who are trying to quit?
I think one of the best things that they can do is learn a variety of skills, because some skills will work better for different people in different environments. But like was mentioned, grounding and meditation, especially if they can identify when they vape most. Like, let's say they get stressed when they're driving and they always are vaping while they're behind the wheel. Learning skills that can be easily used while also multitasking and driving. It's really important to know when and where vaping really comes into their life to be able to determine really broad or really specific coping skills that work best. For example, if it's every time you go to the bathroom at work, maybe doing some sort of mindfulness activity while you're in the bathroom, just thinking about, okay, I am grateful for this, I am happy that I was able to do this, and having those sort of thought, kind of bullet points in their head that they can follow instead of falling back to what they've used before. And also, like was mentioned, recognizing relapse is often part of the process.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask you as well, if you knew of any coping skills for adults.
Like you just said, there's many, coping skills, I recommend, like, if you're smoking in the vehicle, put your cigarettes in the trunk. So you can't reach those cigarettes, you have them with you, because they're in the trunk. That's gonna help you cut down that drive until you get to where you're at. You know, I might decrease 1 or 2 cigarettes during the day. There's many coping skills that you can Google, on the internet to find, ways to help you through the process. And there's also classes out there in the community, to just ask people, because they're there to help. Ask someone who's already quit, they can also help you, determine how they did it, and that will also help you through the process. But there's many different things, that have a coffee in the morning, you know you're gonna do it at that time with a cup of coffee and you're gonna smoke 2 cigarettes. Well, maybe instead of smoking 2 cigarettes, smoke 1 cigarette. And then after a month goes by, maybe drink that cup of coffee in a different area, so you have a different mindset. And then try not smoking any cigarettes and how that works for you. But I also recommend nicotine replacement products. When you have therapy on board and you have nicotine replacement products on board and you have a good foundation with people around you supporting you, you have a 25% chance of long-term sobriety of if you're involved in any other addiction recovery. I highly recommend that to anybody through the process. It just, anything you can do that'll help you, through the process.
Thank you.
Oh, can I chime in a little bit?
No worries, thank you.
So I know somebody who quit nicotine, but it was cigarettes, but it's kind of the same thing. So they did what I would call the ratchet method. So they picked their most intense times where they would have cravings, so maybe it was in the morning after breakfast. They would have to right away have a cigarette, or maybe driving in the car right away, they would do a cigarette. So, and this is after they've tried several different times in their life. To quit. And so they learned some lessons. So when they mastered going 5 minutes after breakfast, and they could do that really easily, they kind of ratcheted it up and went 10 minutes. And then maybe they went 15. And then, maybe at the same time or separately, they would not smoke in the car for short rides, like maybe just to the store and back home. And, then it just seemed like after they tackled, 3 or 4 of those times during the day, and they could extend the time that they wouldn't use, then they just kind of quit. Like it just, one day they just didn't eat it anymore because they could extend the time. And they would also, another thing they told me was they would sit with their cravings and actually think about it. How intense is this? Is this something I can't handle? And things like that. And they realized that it wasn't as bad as they were thinking it was. And then they realized that, that the cravings only lasted a certain amount of time, like 3 or 4 minutes. And then the other thing was usually after about 3 weeks, they didn't have the intense cravings anymore, and they figured I could do anything for 3 weeks after they got past a certain point. So, I don't know, that worked for that person, and then it kind of helps to keep your self-esteem because you're actually being successful doing these small, tiny steps.
Thank you, that was really good. So what do y'all think is a good affirmation in that moment?
I think a really good one is, like was just mentioned about the time. It's like, I can handle this feeling for 10 minutes. I can handle this level of discomfort. Especially where we live in such a instant gratification world with social media, Amazon Prime delivery, all those sort of things. Having the ability to be like, it's okay if I can't get exactly the sensation I want right this second. So building that stress tolerance and being able to be like, I can sit in discomfort, and kind of affirming their own abilities to do that.
I think as somebody that, I smoked for a long time, and I know that the biggest, the thing that I focused on the most when I was quitting, and the thing that I felt the most rebound with is my health. So I would focusing on affirmations about, my body deserves to feel better, I deserve to be able to breathe. I like the way oxygen tastes, I don't know, stuff like that, but, I think it can be beneficial to really focus on the health benefits, because that is what this is really all about, in my opinion, at the end of the day. The mental health is huge, the physical health is huge, they're both tied together. So I think any affirmation that, surrounding, the physical and mental health benefits of it can be, can't be overstated enough.
Thank you. Any other questions from our online audience or in person? All right, well, thank you so much for joining our seminar today. We truly appreciate your presence, and special thank you to our panelists as well. Hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
That wasn't so bad.